Welcome to the latest Seahawks Draft Blog live stream. Rob Staten here. Hopefully, Robbie will be able to join us very shortly. He's just having a few audio issues, but we'll try and get him on as soon as we can. And I can see he's just popping back into the room, so he'll give me a thumbs up when he is ready and he's sorted those audio issues. So, in the meantime, just to let you know, get your super chats in, and we'll stay on as long as they're coming in. That was a really bad game of football. It made it all the more worse by the fact that I stayed up till it's now 6 minutes past 4 in the morning to watch that game of football. So absolutely terrible. Where do you start? I mean, I'll start with this. The Seahawks started the game running the ball very, very well. And Zach Charbonnet had 50 yards in the first half and 7 yards in the second half. And it's just such a problem that they just cannot, for whatever reason, get this running game going. And it's massively frustrating. Robbie's going to join us now, so I'm going to bring him in. Robbie, I was just saying that, for this season, we've often talked about how bad the Seahawks game calling has been, the play calling rather has been. It's 4 o'clock in the morning, man. It's been so bad all season. And you watch that first drive and you want to believe that they're going to figure things out. And they can't. They script a good first drive with a running game, get 50 yards on it or something. Zach Charbonnet had 7 rushing yards in that second half in a game which you led by 3 points. Robbie, Ryan Grubb is not going to be the offensive coordinator next year. There are still people clinging to this idea that it's a defensive line issue. It's a Geno Smith issue. Listen, the offensive line is an issue. Don't get me wrong. Geno Smith is not playing well. He is a bit of an issue as well. Ryan Grubb is not going to be the offensive coordinator of the Seattle Seahawks next season, Robbie.
Oh, yeah, I 1,000% agree. And I think I was one of those guys that was kind of holding on to just don't know about him yet. I want to give him a shot. And maybe that's the UW Husky homer in me. I'm not really sure. But listen, that was garbage. I mean, I got to be honest. I fell asleep at halftime. That was just terrible. It was just the most boring game I've seen. And you're right. I mean, 50 yards in the first half, 7.5 on rushing when it's pissing rain, and you're going to throw the ball how many times? What? I don't understand. I just don't get it at all. Nothing about it made sense.
Nothing about this team's making sense to me. I want to believe, Robbie. I want some enthusiasm. I want some energy to take into the offseason. All I see here are reasons to need a really disruptive offseason. Like people are saying in the comment section, people are saying on Twitter, well, at least the defense played well. Listen, the defense did play well. Look who they were playing. The Bears were a disgrace. They were an absolute disgrace. I'm sure what we'll hear in the press conference afterwards, Robbie, in the interview on 710, the defense got 7 sacks and all of this. Man, it's no different than when they sacked the Giants 7 or 8 times last season. You played a really bad team that doesn't know what it's doing. Just look at the way that the Bears handled the end of that game, Robbie. The Bears haven't got a clue. The guy who's the head coach of that team, interim head coach, is totally out of his depth. They're a shambles of a franchise. Yeah, let's all give the defense a big round of applause. Look who they were playing, man. Like that was what I expected from the defense today, because the shambles that they were playing. Shambles. People can say they put up 300 yards on the Lions, Packers. They're a shambles, man. They are a shambles. And I'm not going to take any real major positivity out of that defensive performance, because you only had to watch that game. Watch that game to see how bad the Bears are. That offense, Robbie, he just hasn't got. He hasn't got any idea how the flow of a game's going along. How do I pivot? How do I adjust? When the defense is doing this, I'm going to bring this. They're not playing 4D chess. They've not got 3 moves ahead where, okay, we're going to start off running this, but we'll throw them some counters through play action with that. They ran the ball. There was no play action off the back of it in the first half. They gave DK Metcalf up until the very end of the game 2 targets in the game. This is a player who, people are going to spend the next few days, Robbie, saying they need to trade this guy. First of all, I don't know how you're going to trade him playing like this. What's his trade value right now? But this is a guy that you are either going to pay a lot of money or you're going to try and trade for a haul, and you're giving him 2 targets in the game. You gave Pharaoh Brown a target in the game, and he fumbles the football. Like, they don't know how to get the best out of their key players. They can't pivot and adjust during games to attack opponents. They are the antithesis of what Ben Johnson is doing with the Lions. And it just cannot go on. They've got to. The defense needs a massive revamp, Robbie. Massive. I'm talking new offensive coordinator, complete rebuild of that offensive line, and some honesty about where they are with this quarterback, who is very capable of making good throws, of making physically impressive throws. But Robbie, you cannot pay your quarterback, the one that we saw today and the one that we saw in the last few games, $40 million a season. You just can't. The people who've been making that argument, you've lost that argument. You can't do it, Robbie. He's going to go into the final game of the season with 17 touchdowns and 15 interceptions. You just can't.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, he's really good in between the 20s, but like, look what happened today again in the red zone. You know what I mean? I mean, he threw it in I don't know what he saw there. He threw it into two linebackers covering the receiver, and it should have been intercepted. It should have been. And yeah, you just can't pay him. You just can't. I don't see any way that they would do it. I think people who make that argument are grasping at straws, and you know, I'm not blaming people for seeing positives in people. That's great, but I mean, just you have to think realistically. This guy just isn't worth it. He's just not.
Well, I mean, we've had this message from Harv saying it's not Geno, it's the play calling. It's everything. It's the play calling, it's the quarterback, it's the offensive line. It's the use of their expensive star players. They don't know how to do it. All of the above. You don't have to have one defining. It doesn't have to be, right, okay, it's definitely not Geno, it's the play calling. How many more years are we going to do this? I get it, the offensive line stings. They've had 2 bad offensive coordinators. But this idea that, well, if you just fix absolutely everything, Geno Smith's going to start throwing throws like he did in that first drive, Robbie, in the red zone. It's BS. Like, you just pointed it out. You get a good drive going. What's he looking at there, Robbie? He just threw it into double, triple coverage, forcing it to Tyler Lockett. That could easily have been an interception. Like, we didn't need to lose any points in the game. The Seahawks only lost 3 of the 6 that they got in this contest through that. Like, you need more from him. Like I said, the offensive line needs a total rebuild. Everybody acknowledges that. And they need an offensive coordinator who knows how to call plays and knows the NFL. And I just keep coming back to this, Robbie. I don't think they've got enough. The 2 main problems I have with the team are that I don't think they have enough to resource to turn this around in one off season. I don't think you can turn all of this around in one off season. And then the other thing is I just fear that they're not close. They are not close. The defense, granted, under Mike McDonald, has taken a step forward. I am not for a second suggesting that isn't the case. This team is not close to being a serious threat. And for the people in the comments who are saying, who is the alternative to Geno Smith? I get it. And I'm not saying that Geno Smith is the only problem. I'm not saying that there are a cluster of appealing options out there. I also don't think that the dearth of options means we just have to accept that this franchise has Geno Smith as the only possible player who can start for the Seahawks until they get slapped in the face with an obvious, brilliant quarterback, Robbie. I just think we need to talk and assess everything on offense. Like, if they need to run through that list of experienced offensive linemen, and if they see somebody who is worth being aggressive for, they've got to go for them. They have got to be honest, and they will be on their offensive staff. I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever that there's going to be some changes to that offensive staff, including the coordinator. But then they also have to be honest about Geno Smith. And I'm sorry, I keep seeing these comments. The whole Jason says the whole Geno thing is a non-story. He's got 1 more year, and if he's worth it, they'll re-sign him. It's not a non-story. How can anybody say it's a non-story at this? Your starting quarterback is never a non-story when you do not have the Burrow, the Mahomes, the Allen, the Lamar, who's here forever. It's a story every year, Robbie, until you find the guy. And it always will be. And that's part of the problem, is that how do they fix the O-line? How do they get a brilliant coordinator? How do they get a quarterback that is a long-term brilliant starter, Robbie? My God, these questions they're going to keep me up at night. Oh, I think we've lost Robbie's volume. We'll see if we can get back to Robbie in a second. In the meantime, I'll get through the super chats. So this from Corey. It says, Rob, does O'Rourke or McCord have development value in your eyes? Thank you again, Rob. I'm afraid to say, Corey, no. Curtis Rourke. We'll just move Robbie out for now. Curtis Rourke does not have starter in the NFL potential for me in terms of top end physical tools. Then maybe he can make it work in a Shanahan style system, but I thought he looked really limited again against Notre Dame, having looked limited against Ohio State, and I just don't see the upside there. Cal McCord now. I mean, it just doesn't have anything. He's one of these players who, fans will watch them. They'll have a couple of good games in college. People think, could he be an answer? And I just don't see the physical tools. I don't see the physical brilliance. I don't see the high upside. He's a guy that Ohio State moved off so they could go and get Will Howard. I just don't see either of those two. And I look down the board and I really struggle to see a quarterback in this draft who is you have to go and get that guy. That's your answer. And that's a problem. And that's part of the problem with Geno, is that Geno Smith is a bridge quarterback and they don't have anybody to bridge to. And that answer's not coming down the line, I don't think, in the 2025 draft. So it means you have to go and have a look at, is Sam Darnold going to be available? Are there other options out there that you have to consider rather than just saying, well, nothing you can do, run it all back? K Soon says, did we have any significant injuries in this game? Not to my knowledge, K Soon. I'm sorry, I can't offer more than that at this point. I've not seen anything that would suggest that. Big Mike says, for you, Rob, staying up to watch that Drek. Thank you, Big Mike. Appreciate the super chat. Appreciate the support that you continue to give. This one from Tommy says, I lost my job, still donating. Tommy, I'm really sorry to hear that, man. And I appreciate it. And don't feel like you've got to donate. But I really do appreciate that, man. And, I hope you get back on your feet. Tommy says, effing pathetic. This QB is garbage. So is the play calling. Geno is a bridge. Can we finally agree on that? I completely agree with that. That is what he is. And it's fine to admit that. I don't know why it is such a talking point, frankly. Like, Geno is a bridge. And I would happily continue with Geno Smith if you had that young quarterback on your roster that you were just fine-tuning them and just preparing them to be the starter in a way that, let's say, the Green Bay Packers did with Jordan Love. If they were doing that, then I'd have no issue at all. And I accept that he's a bridge and it's a means to an end. The problem for the Seahawks is that they don't have that means to an end. They just have Geno Smith. Sam Howell's not the answer. It's hard to find who the young quarterback is who's going to be added in the offseason via the draft. Therefore, you kind of just think, how much longer can you keep going on with an aging quarterback who is a bridge with no future? And it is a problem. It's more, I think, what Brian Nemhauser was saying on his blog this week. He wrote a very good blog sort of addressing the future of Grubb, Geno, some things. Geno is not a particularly popular or marketable quarterback for the franchise. And when you get stuck in a position like that, it's quite hard to just keep going over and over again year to year. Geno Smith is far from Seattle's biggest problem, but he is not a solution to getting them to where they want to go either. Robbie, you are back. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, can you guys hear me all right?
Loud and clear.
There we
Loud
go.
and clear. Good to have you back. I was just going through some of the super chats. I'll come back to some of these in a moment because I want to get your thoughts on what people are talking about, what they're discussing as well. I kind of bring us back just to what we were talking about before we lost you.
Yeah.
It's the extent of the work that is needed, Robbie, and the bleakness, in my opinion. I hate to say that because I don't come into these things or write my articles wanting to be bleak to fans. I just want to be honest. I don't look at this offseason, Robbie, and see the names on the free agent lists and the names in the draft that make me think this time next year we're going to be talking about a cracking football team. I think there are some offensive linemen in this draft that can help, but they're young players, and we've seen with Christian Haynes, they don't provide always immediate answers and solutions. There's some young offensive linemen in this draft that make me optimistic, that make me excited. But apart from that, Robbie, I don't see how this team goes from where they are now to somewhere a lot better in a year's time with what is available to them in the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the opportunity can be there. I still think they still have pieces in place. I think the defense has taken a step forward this year, regardless of everything else on the offensive side of the ball. I do think if they can get a couple offensive linemen that can help shore that up a little bit, I mean, they don't have to be. All they have to do is be 50% better than what they are now, and they're pretty shitty right now. So if you get them just to be a little bit better, that's a big win. I think what you were saying earlier, though, is part of the problem is you've got Geno as the bridge quarterback, and you don't have anybody that to replace him once that time comes. And people can argue when they think that will be, but the thing is, you got to have somebody in the whole. And Sam Howell, this isn't it. We all know that, and that's what you have right now. I do think you can turn a team around in offseason. You've seen it do it with other teams. One, you're going to have to get an experienced offensive coordinator who knows how to get their playmakers the ball. And you're going to have to learn how to, if your offensive line is this bad, a way to put your quarterback in a position to succeed even when your offensive line is this bad. Because it's not the first time we've had an bad offensive line. And you saw Russ be able to carry the team on his back for a while. I mean, it is possible. So I don't know. I think there is a way to turn around. But I think you're right. I don't think we're an offseason away from being Super Bowl contenders. But I do think you can turn it around.
I think you mentioning Russ there is what makes it hard right now, because when offensive lines were bad, like 2018, 2019, 2020, Russ was probably at his peak. I think it's fair to say, like he was at the peak of his powers in that period, especially, when they started 5-0 in the COVID year. You kind of felt like if they could just get this right around the quarterback, then the quarterback could be, good enough to get you into a deep playoff run. And they never quite got the pass rush fixed. They never quite got the offensive line fixed. And that was a failure on Seattle's behalf. But you kind of always could go into every offseason, Robbie, going, maybe they could do it. Maybe this year they could get that pass rush fixed. And maybe they could get some offensive linemen who could do a job. And then there could be a real team. And sadly, it never happened. Whereas like now, you're saying you're saying the same thing about the offensive line. The pass rush is in a different place, thankfully. You're saying the same thing about the offensive line, but you've then also got to say, yeah, and you also need like a quarterback who can get you there. You also need a play caller that can get you there. Like you need all of the pieces, really, to have a functioning quality offense, and that can take a long time, and that is just really hard. It's really hard. And I want them to be aggressive. I've said it for a couple of weeks. I want a disruptive offseason. I want big decisions to be made. If that means that you do have to trade DK Metcalf away and not get the ideal stock, if you think that's best, if that enables you to improve your offensive line, I think you've got to consider it. If that means just moving on from Geno Smith, Robbie, and going in a totally different direction, maybe taking a punt on Sam Darnold, so be it, if he's even available. I think the better he plays week after week, maybe it's the less likely that Minnesota lets him go. Maybe they franchise him or something. I don't know.
I think he's also probably priced himself out of our price range, to be honest.
The good thing is that because of the Baker Mayfield contract, it shows us that like his cap hit's like 7 million or something this year. So even if he was to earn a fair bit more than Baker Mayfield, you could still structure the cap hit in year one to be quite small. So you could find a way to make it work. Whether you want to or not, I don't know. But that is probably the only veteran option, I would say. Like I don't know if you can think of any others.
I can't, but I can't honestly say I know if I would want Sam Darnold in either. Like, he's playing under, a great offensive minded head coach. So
he is. I mean, the thing is that sometimes it's that. Sometimes I think a franchise maybe just needs that hope, and maybe you can sell that a little bit more sometimes. And you can say, look, Sam Darnold has succeeded in the first place he's been. That's not a shambles. He was with the Jets. He was with the Panthers. He had a year with the Niners as the backup, and now he's with Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota, and he's excelling. Like, can you say, well, look, he may not have Kevin O'Connell, but he excelled in the first place. There wasn't a joke. So if he comes to Seattle, maybe you give him a good coordinator, you can feel like you can retain what he did well. But it'd be a gamble, and it'd be an expensive gamble. But it's just hard. It's really hard to say to fans, like, you're a 9-win team again. If they lose to the Rams, it's a third consecutive 9-8 season. It's hard to turn around to fans, Robbie, and go, we're heading in the right direction. Right at the minute, they just look like the same team we've been watching with a slightly better defense and perhaps a worse offense right now. And what we want to see is him take a huge step forward. And it really worries me that they're not going to do that until they get lucky with a quarterback in the way that, let's say, the Ravens got lucky with Lamar at the end of round one, or in many ways, the Chiefs got lucky in the fact that the entire NFL seemed to underrate Patrick Mahomes and let him get to the 10th overall pick in the first place. Or that, I don't know, like the Bills got lucky with Josh Allen that he was, the third or fourth quarterback taken. Let's get through some of the super chats. This from Sovereign Magic. How about a bridge and Riley Leonard? Big fan of his. Riley Leonard, it's impossible, I'm afraid, to watch Riley Leonard. I think, Robbie, you watched him live this year.
Yeah, I mean, even Notre Dame fans were pissed. I mean, listen, the guy's a heck of an athlete, but can't throw it further than like 40 yards. Not accurate, anyways. He's not a good thrower at all.
I'll just keep saying, from the people in the NFL, I feel very lucky. Sometimes I kind of wonder how it's happened that there are certain people I get to talk to, Robbie, and one of the people I've spoken to, I respect unbelievably, just says he watches third downs. He just watches a quarterback on third downs. And I cannot imagine Riley Leonard, 3rd and 8, game on the line in the NFL, and him just standing tall in the pocket and going through 2 progressions, Robbie, and then finding his third target. And I'm afraid he is a good athlete and he can move around a little bit. That's really it. It's very hard to imagine he is the future. I wish I could give you a better answer than that. That's just what I feel. Hawk Manny, I really appreciate this, man. I think you did this in the last stream as well, and that's just incredibly generous. And I really appreciate this. He says, I know you've talked about McDonald letting Grubb run the offense and be hands-off, but I just can't understand how he can let it go on every week with so few changes to the system. All I want for Christmas is a new offensive coordinator. Hawk Manny, again, thank you for that incredibly generous super chat. Robbie, Manny's got a point here because Grubb has been a failure, and I don't think they're going to give me a grace year and say come back next year. But Mike Macdonald's the head coach, and week after week after week, it's very hard to work out what they're actually trying to be on offense, Robbie. And some of that does come down to the head coach. He can't just be, it's nothing to do with me. Like, that does come back to Mike Macdonald. His offense, his offense of his team is all over the place.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, he's gonna have to take some responsibility, and I guess talk is different than actual actions, because you hear him say like, well, we want to run the ball and we want to do these things, and you see it in the game time, you think, okay, well, that's what we're gonna see, and then whatever happens between what he says in actual game time is very different. I think, I mean, I think Mike Macdonald obviously is a clearly good defensive-minded head coach. I think he needs a veteran offensive coordinator, someone who's been around and has been an offensive coordinator for a while to come in and understand the game a little bit more. I think Grubb is just too raw. I'm not giving up on Grubb being an offensive coordinator in the NFL. I just don't think he's ready yet, and I think we probably threw him into the mix. He kind of was like a high risk, high reward kind of guy. You don't know what you're getting with him. He did a great job at UW, and you think if he could come in and do the same thing, then maybe I mean, we were talking early on before the season started. We said if he hits, he's only going to be around 2 years anyways, because he's going to leave for a head coaching job because he's going to get, taken up. I mean, right? I mean, that's kind of what we were thinking if he was going to hit. So sometimes
in fairness to that, yeah, I mean, in fairness to that, we would have said that about anybody. Like that wasn't so much about Grubb as it was about if anybody, we liked the way they'd stacked their staff with Jake Peets and people like that in case it didn't work out. And Robbie, I'll make some predictions for the offseason in a bit, and one of them will be that I think Jake Peets will be the offensive coordinator next year. I think they will want some level of consistency. I don't know if that will be a good decision or not. He's never called plays in the NFL. They might wait to see, first of all, who gets fired and who might be available, whether that's offensive coordinators again. I mean, what if Mike Kafka gets fired? They may want to speak to him again. What if Daboll gets fired? They might want to speak to him. What if Doug Peterson gets fired? They might want to speak to him. These people might not even want to come straight back into work, but you probably have to have a look. But that would be sort of my prediction right now. I just think with it, like you say, it was a high risk, high reward move, but we also have to remember Ryan Grubb he didn't even call plays at Washington. That was Kalen DeBoer. Like, it was Kalen DeBoer who led the offense, and that's probably, with hindsight, the error is that it's Kalen DeBoer's offense, and Ryan Grubb was his right-hand man. And you gave Ryan Grubb the keys to an NFL offense, and he'd never coached in the NFL before. And again, I said this last week, Robbie, I can't sit here and go, I knew this was going to be bad all along, because I was completely comfortable to see how this went, as I think most people were. I don't think anybody was hammering this appointment. But when you look back with hindsight, you do kind of have to wonder, how on earth did they get to a point where they appointed somebody to run the offense in its entirety who'd never even coached in the NFL before? Like, that is a really bizarre move when you look back on it now. And it hasn't worked out, and he's going to move on, probably back to Alabama, to be honest, to go and work with Kalen DeBoer. And I'm sure he'll be very good there. But Seattle will have to move on and find a new offensive coordinator. We have so many of these super chats. I want to try and get through them. Hawks fan Mattman says, I know the O-line sucks, but how much worse is Grubb's play calling making them look? I think coaching, I think the O-line is bad, and the coaching has been sufficiently bad as well to make them probably look worse than they are. I mean, Robbie, there are O-lines out there who are very young or have equally sort of deficient in talent who are not playing as badly as Seattle's. Now, there are some that are worse. The Houston Texans, for example, their O-line is worse. But Seattle's, I think, they've gone above and beyond to be bad at times. And I don't think today they were particularly bad, Robbie, but maybe they were, because they couldn't do it absolutely anything in that second half, could they? I mean, it was a complete borefest of a game, and the offense just shut down in the second half.
Yeah, it's pretty bad, and I still think you can work around it. Again, we've seen it happen before here in Seattle, so I don't see any reason why you can't work around that a little bit.
PO says the only significant injury from that game is our eyes. I'm tired of watching Eugene Smith stink it up on primetime games. Well, that was his first ever win on Thursday Night Football. He is now 1-7. So congratulations to him. I know we have another super chat coming up later on where we can dabble back in the whole quarterback debate. Jack says, imagine how happy we'd be if we gave up this year's first to get Penix. Now we are faced with an awful quarterback class and another year of mediocrity. Jack, I'm not ready to say that. I mean, Michael Penix had a great college career and has a great arm. I don't think that one game that Atlanta had against the Giants, I mean, everybody beats the Giants except Seattle. I don't think that's enough for me to sort of think, I wish we had Michael Penix. Like, come back in a little while. I mean, look, I have to say, Robbie, I am not that jealous of the Falcons, or I'm not even that jealous of the Denver Broncos. Like, I want to aim high. I want to aim higher than that at quarterback. I just don't see the quarterback that enables you to do this. And that's the tough thing. That's what makes it so much harder. Jesse Lund says DK picked a fight with someone as big as him. Yeah. What did you make of that, Robbie? I mean, at the time I thought, oh, what are you doing, DK? This is preposterous. But then as I was watching that second half, I think I lost the will to live and therefore give a toss about anything that had happened with regards to that, Robbie.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really see what he was, obviously you can't hear what people are saying, but I don't think there was any reason to get so pissy about it. The announcers did say something about him, maybe this will spark something in him or the team. All right, fair. If that's the route he was going for, maybe to light a fire under your ass to play a little bit better, but it didn't seem to help. So I could do without that.
Jesse, thanks for super chat. Baller MJ31 says, for those asking for a solution to Geno, it's play Sam Howell, be terrible for a year and draft a top quarterback. We are not a good competitive team. Okay, Robbie. I mean, where do you stand on that one? I mean, I'm never a fan of being purposely bad in the hope that a quarterback will come to you that is great. Now, the reason for that is if you think of the quarterbacks in the last few years who many people felt were going to be great, they haven't worked out. Like, let's say Trevor Lawrence was in the next draft and you said the Seahawks have got a chance to be so bad that they could draft him. Every Seahawks fan would be pumped about that. They'd be thinking, Trevor Lawrence, amazing. Like, oh, he was a winner at Clemson and he did this and he did that and he's perfect and he's like Andrew Luck. And if you drafted Trevor Lawrence, you'd be so excited, Robbie. And here we are, years into Trevor Lawrence's career, and he might be a bust, and an expensive bust at that. Like, you can't lose your way into being good. It just doesn't work like that. And the teams with great quarterbacks, I get it. Burrow, first overall pick. But nobody thought Joe Burrow was going to be the first overall pick when the college football season began. He had an unbelievable season at LSU and made himself the number one overall pick. Allen wasn't the number one overall pick in Buffalo. Lamar wasn't. Mahomes wasn't. Jared Goff was the number one overall pick, but he's ended up going to the Lions for a lot less. Matt Stafford was the number one overall pick, but he ended up going to the Rams for a trade. I just don't think, Robbie, that the route to glory is being purposefully terrible to get draft position. I think you've got to find a way to do it in a different way. I have not got a problem with them being aggressive for a quarterback if the right quarterback's there. I just don't see that would be this year, next year. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I was never on that suck for luck train or anything like that. Who would it be coming up soon anyways? Arch Manning? Is that who's the next guy everyone would want to you would think maybe. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I think if I would be okay giving Sam Howell the chance to be the starting quarterback if we drafted somebody. Okay, so just for example, I'd be okay if we traded Geno or we cut him or whatever, and we end up we're doing a rebuild and you give Sam Howell and Quinn Ewers in the draft, and then you're like, okay, these are our quarterbacks for now, and you're letting them battle it out, and then having whoever Quinn Ewers sit behind for a year while Howell, plays a role, and then you've got another bridge for whoever your quarterback is coming forward. I'm okay with that scenario. That's more of what I would be all right with. But I'm not going to just want to just tank just to be crappy, just to try to get a quarterback who may hit.
Yeah. You just keep looking at it like so Tua, would you want Tua? Like, no, like the tank for Tua was a thing. When you look down the list, CJ Stroud's had a difficult year. Anthony Richardson has struggled. Lawrence has struggled. Justin Herbert's playing well. Bo Nix has had a reasonable year, but I don't think Bo Nix without Sean Payton would be anything to write home about. Jaden Daniels has done well. Daniel Jones didn't with the Giants. Sam Darnold's gone on a journey. Like, he obviously didn't succeed initially, though. And like Baker Mayfield's had to like have a career resurgence as a former number 1 overall pick. So it's not always sort of like the answer to just be bad and be in that position, I'm afraid. Okay. Can you dig it? Says Geno's extension hope slipped away as that game passed on. If we threw an interception earlier in the game, there's a real chance we'd be 3-3 going into overtime. We are sadly in 9-8 purgatory with no end in sight. Thank you. Can you dig it? I just think that, I mean, Robbie, what do you think? I think that's it now. That debate should be over. The idea of like, you have 2 options for me. Well, 3 options with Geno Smith. You can cut him outright and just move on. You can trade him. I don't know what kind of market he'd have, frankly. Or you can extend his contract purely on the basis of lowering his cap hit next year, which will be $40 to $42 million. So you extend him, the contract remains a year-to-year arrangement. It kicks the can down the road, but you lower his cap hit to create some money so that you can do some other things in the offseason, Robbie. They're the only 3 options for me. Not the option of giving him a massive commitment on a contract. That ship has long sailed. Albert Breer did a piece on Amazon before the game saying that Geno Smith people want a long-term commitment in the summer. Well, as I replied to Curtis when he pointed this quote out to me, I would also love to have fantastic hair. That's not happening either. So it's that ship sailed, hasn't it? Like there's not even any point anybody out there, and there will be. You know, there's been a lot of people in the media. There's been a lot of people in Seahawks Twitter who still cling to this. I had somebody tweeting to me earlier tonight saying that for questioning the near interception in the first quarter, that it was my fault that Geno Smith is struggling at the minute. That negativity is creating like a negative vibe around him, and that's our fault. It's bad fans who are the problem. And then I had another person say that they hoped that the next quarterback in Seattle struggled just so everybody could see how much we didn't appreciate Geno Smith. I mean, that's where we are as discourse now, Robbie. We have people saying that they hope the Seahawks fail so they can be proven right on Geno Smith.
That's just ridiculous. If they want to believe
it's
that.
It's like a cult, man. It's
yeah,
honestly, I mean, it's like a cult.
Yeah. It's like you can't have anything that's negative to say about the team, or you're automatically a hater, or you don't know ball, which is also my favorite saying now. You just don't know ball.
You don't know ball because the thing is that we do have this, and it won't be just in Seattle. Like there are now cults of personalities involved. Like it's no longer like I'm a Seahawks fan. Like I just want the Seahawks to do well, and I don't think that the players, for example, I don't think Reek Woolen's had a very good year overall. I think that he's a frustrating player because he's got the potential to be the best cornerback in the league, and he's. I just don't think mentally he's in a position where he can deliver on that. At least not at this stage in his career. So that I find that really frustrating. But I don't have a problem with discussing that. I don't have a problem discussing how the offensive line isn't very good. And I don't have a problem discussing that I think the quarterback has physical talent to die for, but makes too many mistakes, especially in the red zone, and is not a long-term answer as he turns 35 next year. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's just a common sense approach to it. But there are people out there who just think, no. They're so invested in Geno Smith succeeding, and that they're Geno fans first, Seahawks fans second almost. And I find that weird. Troy in Philippines says, I love your commitment. I'm an American living in the Philippines. 10 a.m. games are 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. I'm a fan of primetime games, unlike you, 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. here. Troy, great to hear from you, man. Hope all is well in the Philippines. And I am jealous of that. Like the primetime games over here, it's 4:45 in the morning. It is an absolute. I mean, imagine watching that at 4 in the morning, Robbie. That game.
Listen, it's not even midnight here, and it's getting close. But I mean, I fell asleep at halftime. I was so bored. So yeah.
There's a number of times when you're watching a game like that, and you think, "What am I doing with my life?"
Right. Questioning everything.
The thing is, I've said this to Adam privately. We may have talked about it. Robbie, sometimes I enjoy doing the streams more than the games. Like actually coming and having a conversation with you or Adam, I find that more enjoyable, like cathartic, fun. I find that more enjoyable than some of the games at the minute, which is a shame. It never used to be that way. Kyle says, Rob and Robbie, any ideas or thoughts on offensive coordinator coaches available or offensive head coaches that will be let go that could fit McDonald's vision for the offense? I'll give you a bit of time to think of some names, Robbie. I'll just kind of run through. So, you have to wonder who gets fired. Like, does Mike... I mean, it will be very confusing to have Mike McDonald as the head coach and Mike McDaniel as the offensive coordinator. I mean, that will not be very easy to handle from a speaking and writing perspective. But you wonder, will the Dolphins fire McDaniel? They interviewed McDaniel's offensive coordinator for the head coaching job. He didn't get a second interview, but if he's let go or if they're both let go, do they return to that? I don't think Kevin Stefanski's going to get fired. I mean, that would be the stupidest thing. Even a stupid organization like the Browns would never do that. Don't see Steichen getting fired by the Colts. Doug Peterson, obviously, has got ties to the Northwest. But if Doug Peterson gets fired, is he going to want to take an immediate job in Seattle as the offensive coordinator, as a Super Bowl winning head coach? Is he going to want to come and be an offensive coordinator in Seattle? I'm not sure. Versus playing out whatever remainder is left in his contract in Jacksonville on gardening leave or whatever. The Chiefs have got like a whole bunch of staff that you could lean on if you wanted an Andy Reid person. I mean, run through the list of the people behind the scenes with the Chiefs. I think there was somebody that I had a look at from the Chargers staff whose name I can't remember. Apologies. If you just wanted to get a Harbaugh person. Apart from that, I mean, Brian Schottenheimer could potentially leave, I suppose, Dallas Cowboys. I know people have been talking about that, but I think that as time goes on, it seems more likely that Mike McCarthy will get a new contract in Dallas and Schottenheimer might stay. Daboll and Kafka in New York would presumably be an option. You then at Detroit, if Ben Johnson leaves, I'm guessing that Tanner Engstrand will be the replacement offensive coordinator there, so he probably wouldn't be available. Who's Josh McCown, isn't it, at Minnesota? Who's the quarterback coach? Is he ready to be an offensive coordinator? Maybe. And if you wanted to go after Darnold, they played together in New York and they've coached together in Minnesota. Maybe that's an option. The Saints have got Kubiak. What's his plan going to be in the offseason because he might leave with a new head coach coming in there. I think that's pretty much it. There's not really anybody else I can think of. It's always worth having a look at McVay's coaching tree, I suppose. See if there's anybody that you would want to poach from there. So there we go, Robbie. I mean, am I missing anybody?
I mean, not that I can think of. I mean, even as you were talking about it, those were like only some of the names that I could possibly think of. Someone mentioned Kellen Moore earlier in the chat, but why would he get let go? Isn't he already the offensive coordinator for the Eagles?
He is. I mean, he's getting talked about as head coaching jobs because he's done a good job there. So, I mean, Saquon Barkley has helped him out, but yeah. I mean, it's not. There's not a knockout candidate, is there, Robbie? There's not like when Vic Fangio was available, teams would always go get Vic Fangio as the defensive coordinator. There's not like that kind of get him in. He'll be amazing kind of candidate. But if people have got suggestions, super chat them away, and I'm happy to read them out and discuss them. Jeffrey says, makes me sick, but things are looking good for Casey's third. I'm a bit confused by that, Robbie.
He's saying it makes him sick, but things are looking good for Kansas City's trip to a third Super Bowl win. That's my guess.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, I still think the playoffs are going to be really unpredictable this year. Maybe I'm going to be completely wrong, and you're right, and the Chiefs will just get there again. I just think it's got a feel of weirdness this NFL season. Like someone unlikely might have a run here. Mickle Cam 10 says, Robbie, you asked if John was going to keep on approaching each offseason like, oh, no QPs available in the draft, no problem, let's push it till next year. How much longer will the front office tolerate that? Well, I suppose John is in charge of the front office. It's more a case of how long will ownership tolerate that, which I think is a good question. And look, thank you for bringing it up, Mickle, and thank you for the super chat. Robbie, I do think this is a thing. I think, do you know when people were talking about the tickets thing a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about people selling tickets and why does the home record stink and stuff like this? I think ownership will be conscious and aware of how much that was talked about. And then when DK Metcalf mentioned it in public, I think their conclusion will be, we do not have enough selling points on this team right now. They don't have stars. They have very good players. Leonard Williams is, as he showed today, again, an excellent player. Devin Witherspoon had an excellent game. He's a very good player. The Seahawks don't have legit amazing stars. Maybe Jackson Smith and Jibber will emerge as one, but they don't have somebody that you say, Robbie, I need to see this guy play every week. It is a privilege to have this guy playing in Seattle. I need to go and watch him. And that's a problem. I'm not suggesting that just drafting a quarterback or just signing Sam Darnold will fix that. Because as we've discussed, Sam Darnold's not a sure thing, and neither of the draft picks in the next draft. But I think they might apply a bit of pressure to John and say, listen, John, this is 3, 9, and 8 seasons. I'm assuming a loss, obviously. If not, it's 10 and 7 instead of 9 and 8. These are 3 very similar seasons now. Like, how are you going to get fans engaged with this team again to the point that they feel like they have to be at Lumen Field? And I'm not sure, Robbie, that kicking the can down the road at quarterback again is going to be acceptable to them. I think they will think Geno Smith is not that marketable, that they need someone who they can market a bit more, that maybe something different will be more interesting, more exciting, and that they have to fix things like the offensive line to give whoever is the quarterback, even if that is Geno Smith again next year, to give people some excitement. And I think there's a distinct lack of excitement around the franchise right now. And I don't think we should underestimate the financial side of this, the marketability side of this, and how people in ownership might be sort of applying a bit of pressure to John Snyder to say, you need to shake things up a little bit, man.
Listen, I've been a season ticket holder since 2007, and I was at that game, the Packers game, where there were clearly so many. It felt like a Packers home game. I'm going to be honest, it did. And I messaged you and Adam while I was there. I was like, holy cow, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, even the year that we had Jim Mora, was it bad? Yeah, but there was still always fans, and it was loud. And I've never sat in a section, in my section, and had people just sitting. People just sat the whole time. They didn't stand and they didn't scream. It was. Yeah, and then like Tom said, I know the Packers do travel well. I do know that because I know Packers fans come out of the woodworks and they travel well. But I've never seen that many Packers fans, and I've never seen that many Seahawks fans just sitting. Even when the game started, they weren't cheering loud. It's just it was a different vibe when I went to the game, and from what I remembered since 2007. And like I said, I've been to almost every single home game since then, and I don't know, man. It's different. I think you're onto something there. I think there has to be some sort of, something that like got to market to the team to get the fans back in, so they're not just selling it for top dollar and call it good.
I genuinely think it's an important thing that I don't think people really consider. That this is as the more it went on, this is the more I kept thinking of. Is that yeah, you know what? We're talking about, wow, Seahawks fans selling the tickets, they're a problem, blah blah blah. I genuinely think ownership's thinking, we're not exciting enough. With this franchise is not, it hasn't got the players you've got to watch. And when you think to the Holmgren Super Bowl, you would pay to watch Sean Alexander and that offensive line and Matt Hasselbeck. And then when the next year happened, you would pay to watch Marshawn and Russ and the LOB. You would. And right now, I do think it's a hard sell to say, come and watch a slightly, a moderately improved defense. But, the head coach is not Mr. Charisma, is he? He's not exactly like, wow, rock and roll star like Pete Carroll was, which I do not have a problem with. I'm just saying he's not he's not the kind of person that we've got to see Mike McDonald's team. You don't have a quarterback who is loved. You have a quarterback that is loved by some on the internet and some at ESPN, but you don't have a quarterback that the fan base is really excited about. And I've just been, I'm going to have to come back to Ryan Grubb in a second. And you don't have a lot of sort of other players who, like I say, I really enjoy watching Leonard Williams play. I don't think your sort of non-diehard fan feels like he has to go to Lumen to watch Leonard Williams. I don't think he does. So that's all I'm saying with that. Yeah. Okay, let's get on to super chats again. This one from Ocean Hills Detailing. No one is going to be cheaper than 7. Such a ridiculous take again. Just like asking for a new coach over Pete Carroll. This coach has no personality. Okay, this was the super chat I saw coming earlier, Robbie, and thought was one that we should talk about. So first of all, I don't care whether anyone's going to be cheaper than Geno Smith. That's not the point. The objective is not to have just a cheaper quarterback. If that was the objective, yes, there are plenty of players who are going to be cheaper than Geno Smith. Daniel Jones will be cheaper than Geno Smith. Kirk Cousins will be cheaper than Geno Smith. Anybody in the 2025 draft will be cheaper than Geno Smith. If the objective is to get cheaper, then that is very easy to accomplish. That's not the argument. The argument is that Geno Smith is 35 next year, and they don't have a bridge option for the bridge quarterback. They just have the bridge quarterback and nobody else. And that's a difficult place to be. And if you are not going to draft someone again this year because you don't like the options in the draft, or if you're just going to take someone for the sake of it, which isn't a good idea either, then it's eventually you are going to run out of time where you can turn around to this fan base and go, we've had a third consecutive 9-win season, but bear with us because we're going to give it another go next year with a quarterback who, like I say, is not particularly, he is not loved by fans. And that's not a reason to get rid of him alone. But he's a 17 touchdown, 15 interception quarterback. He is not the future. He is not the biggest problem in Seattle. Neither is he the solution in Seattle to this team becoming a contender. As for the reference to it's just like asking for a new coach over Pete Carroll, Robbie, I have zero regrets over asking for that. Pete Carroll's time was done. Pete Carroll has not had a sniff at another job since leaving Seattle, to the point that he's now turning to Adam Schefter and asking him to put out splash reports on Christmas Day to try and get him an interview with the Bears. I bet he doesn't get that job either. So I have no regrets from that, Robbie. It was time for a change with Pete Carroll.
Yeah, it was definitely time for a change. And then, I mean, the Pete Carroll reference doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me, just for the simple fact that, I mean, if you want to start comparing stats from last year to this year, you see the defense is improving. I don't know. And I'm not, listen, it just, his time was come. I'm not taking anything away from Pete Carroll. I love Pete Carroll. I'll always love Pete Carroll. Same thing with like Richard Sherman. I'll always love Richard Sherman. Listen, you can.
I've had enough of Sherman.
I'll go down the line. I'll keep saying it. I'll still love Earl Thomas, even if a whack job that guy is. I'll still always love. I have all their jerseys. I will always appreciate everything they brought to Seattle. I'll never be upset about that. But when the time has come, and it was time for Pete Carroll to be done. So I'm good with it.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, you can't go on forever. Like, it's time for a change. On the Sherman thing there, Robbie, I just can't. I've seen him wearing that freaking Niners hat. So I don't even watch his podcast. But every time the Niners have a win, he puts that bloody Niners hat on. And I'm very much with the Marshawn Lynch school of thought of, why are you, like, wearing that? Why are you, like, jiving with the Niners all the time? Remember where you made your name. Remember the team that, you know, that you had your success with, that you won with, that you earned your money with. That when Marshawn did that, it made me appreciate Marshawn even more than I did already. So I'm with Marshawn on that one. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. But look, there are some people who are, like I say, there's like a cult of personality going on with Geno. There was with Pete Carroll. There was with Russell Wilson. There was a little bit with Jamal Adams for a while. Corey says maybe Levis or Anthony Richardson after they're replaced. I don't see the Colts giving up on Anthony Richardson just yet. And I think we have to remember with Anthony Richardson is it took Josh Allen 2 full years. I mean, Josh Allen was a meme for 2 years until he worked it out. So I think the Colts will be well aware of that. And I have to say, Robbie, I kind of feel that way about Will Levis. Like I think the coach in Tennessee, by the way, should be fired. And that's not because I think Will Levis is blameless for any of this. Far from it. I mean, he's made some horrendous interceptions this year. Awful. But he didn't do stuff like that again. I mean, he made some bad interceptions like all college quarterbacks do, but not at this rate. His decision-making wasn't this bad. And they can't protect him at all. Like they've invested so much in their offensive line, and their line, it stinks. And they've got rid of Hopkins. They don't have any weapons there. I mean, I just think that the coaches in Tennessee should be one and done. And they need to get somebody else. Whether they have Will Levis at quarterback in the future or not, I think Callahan and they need to go. I think it's been appalling. If Will Levis was cut and a free agent, would I be open-minded to a reclamation project? Yeah. I don't think that's going to happen either anytime soon. I think they will at least have him on the roster next year. And for Anthony Richardson, Robbie, I don't think I don't think he's close to being removed by the Colts. I mean, you are in that sort of part of the world most of the year. What's your sort of sense on Anthony Richardson?
Yeah, he's split 50-50. There's a lot of people who love him, and there's a lot of people who just can't stand him, and they get real frustrated. And people were calling for Flacco earlier. So yeah, I think it's just going to be one of those things where you got to wait it out on the guy. It really set people sour when he sat out because he was just tired.
Yeah, that was stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you do that, you don't admit to it.
No, exactly. Yeah.
But I mean, and look, you watch him play, Robbie. He can't throw. I mean, at the minute, he can't throw. So, and Levis has made a lot of mistakes. But I just think, look, you watch them all. Like it's so hard being a young quarterback. Stroud's had issues, bad O-line. Bryce Young's had issues, plays for the Panthers. Will Levis has had issues, bad line, plays for the Titans. Anthony Richardson plays for Colts who are like the bad Seahawks. Like they're the Seahawks, but a bit worse, aren't they? The Colts. And maybe maybe you've got this kind of like weird jinx going on here, Robbie.
Maybe I'm the common denominator. There you go.
Can you follow the Niners for a bit?
Yeah, there you go. You didn't pay me enough to do that.
Cisco says, are there any younger quarterbacks on other teams that could use a change of scenery? Richardson, Young, Lawrence, Jones, Fields. Anyone worth picking up the phone for? I have gone through the Our Lads depth charts a few times over the weeks, Robbie, trying to find who that could be. I mean, I know somebody who I respect a ton in the league who thought if Hendon Hooker hadn't have got injured, that he could have been a first-round pick. He went in the third round to the Detroit Lions. I did not agree with that opinion at all. But that's what they thought. So you kind of wonder, is that a name? I have to say, Robbie, when I've watched him in preseason games and stuff like that, I've not exactly been blown away. I don't think he has the physical talent to do it. But he was kind of the only one. I mean, I don't think that the Jaguars will give up on Trevor Lawrence a year after paying him. I don't think the Panthers are going to give up on Bryce Young after his sort of slight return to something like form. Have you any interest in Daniel Jones or Justin Fields there, Robbie? I can't say that I have.
Not a ton of interest, no. I'm gonna throw out a name. Actually, I think somebody just wrote it down, so never mind. But
no, give us the name.
Because I was hammering on him being the next Patrick Mahomes, but I'd be on board for giving Zach Wilson, giving him a shot, bringing him into it, see if he's learned anything under old Detroit's, Denver's head coach. Sean Payton, thank you. Yeah.
Wilson at BYU was excellent, Robbie.
Yeah.
He was excellent. And I think people have forgotten how good he was. And he was number 2 overall for a reason. And there were people who thought he was better than Trevor Lawrence. And Trevor Lawrence is, I mean, this is the thing. Like, you watch these guys play, and, the Jets were totally justified taking him 2nd overall. And it didn't work out, and it hasn't worked out for Trevor Lawrence either. So it really does, I think, does come down to environment and mentality. Like, and that's the problem with him, is has he got the mental capacity, Robbie, to dig in? Like Baker Mayfield has got it. Like Baker Mayfield has got some bollocks, right? Baker Mayfield gets run out of town a couple of teams, and he's kept coming back and kept coming back, and he's got guts, hasn't he? Like he might never be a legendary quarterback, but he's come back and he's fought through. Geno, to an extent, has done the same thing. Like he's fought back, he's kept going, he's rolled with the punches. Fair play to him. Sam Darnold's doing it. I'm just not sure whether Wilson can do it. Like if he was able to, Robbie, I'd be all in on that. If you thought if you could make him into a player, he'd be cheap, he'd be a shot to nothing, he's young, why not? I'm just not sure he's got the maturity, the mentality to do it. But Robbie, you have come up with probably a name that is as interesting as any other out there. So well done. Kevin says the frustrating part to me is that the team will likely go 10-7 and not 9-8 because the Rams will clinch tomorrow and rest their starters, and then management will continue to preach how close they are. Well, I don't know the exact. Thank you, Kevin, for the super chat. I don't know the exact maths involved here, Robbie. Like, there's a few teams that have to win or lose, isn't there? So that even if the Rams win, it's still a game of the weekend. Do you give the Cardinals any chance of beating the Rams? Because I do. I don't think that's a foregone conclusion that the Rams win that game.
Yeah, of course.
But I do think the Rams will win.
I mean, anytime it's it always feels like a 50-50 toss up, regardless of who you're playing and when it's in the NFC West. The division components just doesn't matter. And I could see a scenario where, absolutely the Cardinals win.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of on the same page.
Do you want them there? The thing is, I couldn't care less, Robbie. Like I guess it'd give you something to look forward to. Like, wow, you beat the Rams and you make the playoffs, and like I miss playoff football.
Right.
Like I miss sort of looking forward to the Seahawks playing a game where it's win or go home. But if the Seahawks get to the playoffs, Robbie, I'd know what it's going to be like.
Well, and that's the thing. It's not a wild card spot either, right? So if you win, you get a home game, and I would usually be like, I'm all for that because you get a chance at a home game. We've not been good at home, so.
And I'd have no confidence in them winning that game. Yeah. And also, Robbie, the problem is like, let's say that they get to the playoffs. Does it gloss over some things? Are they going to be as aggressive as if they miss the playoffs? There's a sense of urgency about the plays. If they make the playoffs, not only are you kind of like delaying things by at least a couple of weeks to get serious action going, to make the changes, to get the ball rolling for the offseason. What are you doing it for? Like, if I thought they had even a glimmer of hope of having a run, I'd be all for it. But if you're not going to have a run, you kind of think, just this is crack on with getting better. Anyway, Casey said, frankly, I disagree that the future is bleak. I have faith that Mike Mack will push for serious change in the offseason and make for a better product. I don't think that's what I'm arguing. I don't know what Robbie may well agree with you, but I'm not saying Mike McDonald is going to sit on his hands and therefore the future is bleak. My point is, if you need to rebuild an offense with a new offensive line, that's difficult. I don't see the pathway to greatness at quarterback at the moment for the Seahawks. That's a concern. They've got to find a play caller who can sort this offense out. So when I say things are bleak, that's what I mean. Like, it's very hard to address all of those things. I have no doubt that Mike McDonald will push for serious change. For me, Robbie, the bleakness comes in how difficult it's going to be to actually fix some of these things.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's a lot of things to patch up. I do think you can make a significant dent in that process in an offseason. I don't think it's going to turn us into Super Bowl contenders next year, but I do think he can help.
Yeah. Jared says, 0 chance the Vikings sign or franchise Darnold. They believe in McCarthy. Sign Darnold, new OC, and build a line will be okay. Pay the iron price. Robbie, I'd say I would urge caution to anybody saying there is 0 chance that the Vikings sign Sam Darnold, because I'll give you a scenario here. The Vikings win the NFC North. They win the next 2 games, including their final game against the beat-up Lions. Therefore, get the number 1 seed in the NFC. They then go on a playoff run with home field advantage and a bye and make the Super Bowl. Are you seriously telling me that if Sam Darnold gets the Vikings to the Super Bowl, that there is 0 chance they will retain the quarterback who took the Vikings to the Super Bowl? Or even if Sam Darnold gets them to the NFC Championship game, Robbie, that is a really hard thing to do, to say, off you go, Sam. We believe in JJ McCarthy, who they've not seen play a meaningful snap in the NFL. Like, they can't do that. Like, if Sam Darnold gets this team to the Super Bowl or on a decent playoff run, I'd suggest, Robbie, it's a guaranteed cert that they will franchise him at least to have him next season. If not make the kind of deal, like they may well say, whatever the Rams or the Seahawks are willing to pay you, Sam Darnold, we'll pay you that. Stay here. And then they can just, JJ McCarthy can just be Jordan Love. He can just sit for 3 years. I mean, that's what I would expect, Robbie. If they get, if they crash and burn in the week 1 of the playoffs, yeah, they probably won't franchise him or sign him. Good playoff run. All bets are off, Robbie, for me.
No, I agree. And plus, like, they didn't bring Sam Darnold in to be the starter originally, right? They drafted JJ McCarthy for the starting role, and Sam was just kind of there as the veteran backup, someone who has some NFL experience. So they bring him in, and listen, he ends up being a baller for him. I think there's a good chance that they re-sign him, and then, like you just said, play that. We've got our ace in the hole now, and if Darnold goes down, you've got that opportunity to bring him in.
We're nearly at the end of the Super Chats, and we need to finish the stream anyway because we've done about an hour. But I did want to finish with some predictions before we finish, Robbie, and I want your predictions for the same things that I'm going to chuck out before we finish. Ocean Hills says, Jody needs to sell. Favorite possible new owner? I mean, I think she needs to be more prepared to sell than it sounds like she is at the minute. Unless I'm completely mistaken, I think it was Paul Allen's desire for her to sell. And she seems to be not doing that right now, or not be actively doing that unless it's happening behind the scenes. I have absolutely no idea how to answer that question because I don't know. What I would want is somebody who has the visionary ambition and love and care that Paul Allen had, who is not an absolute barn pot. That's what I would hope for. I don't want a mad interfering owner. I want someone who is in the background very much while being hands-on, but doesn't interfere and is a visionary. And do you know what, Robbie? They are really hard to find. And I can't say, people will say Bezos, Elon, people like that. I can't see them not interfering.
Yeah. I have zero idea. You're never going to get another Paul Allen. You're just not. So it's going to be hard to find that. But I do think it's time for Jody to sell. I agree.
Mike says, thanks for staying up all night for this one, Rob. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. It's 5:14. Thank you. Be Calm, See Clearly says, can we soft reset? It's time for another change. And they've sent another one in saying, I would give my left ball sack for Trevor Lawrence. Robbie, would you give your left or right ball sack for Trevor Lawrence?
I'll keep both of them. Thank you.
I would also prefer to keep both ball sacks. I noticed that it says ball sack as well. Does that mean the ball is still attached? It's just minus the sack. Half a sack is missing. That doesn't sound very pleasant.
Yeah.
I'd almost rather lose the whole thing than just have the dangling testy. They were going too far down that rabbit hole now. But appreciate the super chat there. Be Calm, See Clearly. If anybody else has any other super chats, and I massively appreciate everybody who sent these in and the people. I mean, great numbers again today for Boxing Day night. I massively appreciate all of the support that you give, whether you're just watching or whether you are chipping in with the super chats. So if you've got any more, send them in. But I'm going to sort of finish, Robbie, with some predictions. So let's start with Sam Darnold. I think next season he will be with the Rams. I think they will move on from Matt Stafford. I think they will see him as a younger, alternative. And I think they will sign him to say he's done a great job with Kevin O'Connell. And I think they will bring him back to LA to play for Sean McVay. I think the Seahawks will be in discussions with him and will try and make that happen. But he will ultimately either be traded to the Rams after he's been franchised or kept or whatever, and they'll get something out of him from Minnesota. Or if he leaves and free agency, I think he will go to the Rams. So my thought is either Vikings or Rams for Sam Darnold.
Yeah, I think he stays with the Vikings.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that as well. But I think it's one of those two. I think as a consequence, Geno Smith will sign a contract extension in Seattle that is a bit of a red herring. It will ultimately mean he maybe gets a little bit more down the road, so that if he's, the dead money thing will happen, but he will have earning potential for more, but the contract will be very much year to year, and it will lower his cap hit next season. And Robbie, I have absolutely no idea what they will do to try and generate some QB excitement alongside him, but it will possibly be signing somebody who can be a competitor for Sam Howell's job as a potential reclamation project, or maybe they will draft Quinn Ewers, and that John Schneider will say he's got natural talent. He's not shown it at Texas, but that's the guy who we think has got something in this class, so we're going to bring him in. Do you know what? I'll go with that as my 27th of December in England, anyway, prediction that they re-sign Geno and probably draft someone like Quinn Ewers, maybe even earlier than they should do.
Sure. I don't like it, but I'll go with it.
I think Ryan Grubb will be fine.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I think Jake Peets will be the next defensive coordinator. And I think they will, which people will be happy with, I think they will go big on the offensive line, Robbie. I think that will be their big off-season thing. I can imagine one significant thing happening in the veteran market, either a trade or a signing. My guess would probably be Ryan Kelly. Maybe the center at Green Bay instead. I can imagine something happening there. And then I think they'll draft someone like Tyler Booker in round one, and they will make a big effort to fix the offensive line. So that will be my other prediction as well. I think next year, none of those moves will mean that the Seahawks have a massive difference in record or chances. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I think if they improve the offensive line, got a different coordinator that could scheme a little bit better, I think we could be better than we are now.
Yeah.
I think we take a step forward.
A lot of people saying Jalen Milroe in the comments. Jalen Milroe threw for 15 touchdowns this year. Like, Jalen Milroe might not declare. Like, he's definitely thinking about it because there's been no announcement on that yet, and I am not sure what his future is going to be. So I would not. I mean, physically, he can run around, he can throw it deep, but he has not shown that he can be an accomplished passer. So, and also, if they do fire Ryan Grubb, drafting a quarterback who just spent the last year with Kalen DeBoer might not be the thing that they do. But I suppose Tyler Booker's been with him for a year. Anyway, I think that's about as far. Devin Witherspoon played well. Leonard Williams played well. Good for them. There were some other defenders who played well today. And the defense gives some cause for positivity. But that offense, Robbie. And there were no points in that second half. 0 points. Let me just have a quick scan of the stats before we finish. So looking at this, Seahawks are 5 of 13 on third down. They had 143 passing yards and 122 rushing yards. 1 turnover each. Time of possession pretty much the same. I have to say, Robbie, there was not much between those two teams, was there? That might be the scariest thing. Like, I know that people go, well, they're obviously really bad because they're a 4-win team and Seattle's a 9-win team. If Seattle was playing Green Bay twice, Minnesota Vikings twice, and Detroit Lions twice, Robbie, what would Seattle's record be?
That's a really good point. Probably pretty close.
I think it would be.
Yeah.
Mike's jumped in with the late super chat. What's the deal with Pete's? What's his resume? Happy New Year. I think he means Jake Peets, other than Pete Carroll. Peets is Peetz. He's been around the block. Like, he has been running game coordinator, passing game coordinators in places. He was the offensive coordinator at LSU for a year, so he has been a coordinator, play caller. He then, I think when he left LSU, he might have gone straight to work with Sean McVay. He was with Sean McVay on his staff for some time. And it was a bit of a surprise, a bit of a coup when the Seahawks got him to be their passing game coordinator. I was really surprised that he left LA staff to do that. Seattle must have dangled some decent money his way. But he was being talked up as a potential intriguing offensive coordinator last year. Peter King wrote a piece about him, which is, I don't think, available anymore, so I can't read from it. But he was saying that he is a very interesting coordinator candidate. Seattle got him as a passing game coordinator. Part of me wonders whether they will just prefer that familiarity, not a major change in staff. Somebody who knows Mike McDonald. Maybe they think, yeah, we can work together on this. They can align their visions. And at the end of the day, Robbie, he's a McVay protege. I know Shane Waldron was an epic failure, but pretty much everybody else who's worked with Sean McVay has been an epic success. So maybe you go down that road again. What do you think?
I'm for it. Give it a shot. I mean, he's got a good track record.
I think it'll be him. That's just my prediction, but we haven't got long to find out. One game to go, Robbie. It's another season in the books.
It's crazy. Crazy.
Appreciate your time as always, Robbie. And
Yeah,
great to see you, and I hope you're having a great Christmas.
Thank you. You as well.
And thank you
Thanks
to everybody
for joining. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, the numbers, I really appreciate everybody who's watching this. I mean, hopefully this was more entertaining than the game. And thank you to everybody who continues to support with Super Chats, continues to support on Patreon, continues to read Seahawks Draft Blog, and watches these videos. My big wish, desire, call to arms is please subscribe. Like, let's get it closer to the big 10,000. I think once we get to 10,000, things can really roll for this channel. But we've kind of been stuck around 7,000 or 8,000 for a while. Let's try and get it up towards 10,000. We can do that. I know 40% of you watch and don't subscribe, so let's try and do that. Please like the video. Please leave a comment if you wouldn't mind. SeahawksDraftBlog.com for more analysis. I am going to write something in the next couple of days about bigger picture stuff, so I'll stick that on the blog at some point over the weekend. I suspect that I will come together with Jeff on Monday as usual, but stay tuned for more details on that. If you are in the UK, I'll be on the national radio on Sunday. I don't know which game we're doing yet. We might be stuck with, I think, the Browns, Dolphins, but we might end up doing the Vikings, Packers. So join us for that if you can. Merry Christmas to everybody. If you are celebrating Christmas, enjoy the rest of your Boxing Day. Until next time, bye for now.